See, from this angle, Mike, we're at least 6 feet apart. Bonsoir tout le monde. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to council meeting for April 19, 2021. Bienvenue à la réunion du conseil pour le 19 avril 2021. On va commencer avec appel, roll call. I'll ask members of council to announce themselves, please.
Mike Ternowski, present.
André Brisson, présent.
Jamie Lauren here.
Cindy Saucier here.
Thank you very much. And we also have our clerk with us this evening.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm here.
Parfait, merci beaucoup. Item 2 et 3, la prière puis l'hymne national, the prayer and national anthem we don't do during virtual sessions. Item 4, additions, deletions, or amendments. We have quite a few additions under council member items. So item 18A, myself, in regards to a tree on Legion Lane. For 18B, Councillor Saucier for Earth Day and Earth Week. Item C, Councillor Ternowski in regards to communications. Item D, myself under for garbage bags. And item E, Conseil Brisson in regards to this week's blood clinic. Anything else from members of council they'd like to add under council member items? Hearing, seeing none. Okay. Item 5, adoption of the agenda. Motion to approve the agenda as amended. Need a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Conseiller Brisson, seconded by Councillor Ternowski. All those in favor?
Mike Ternowski, yes.
André, oui.
Jamie, yes.
Cindy Saucier, yes.
Perfect. Carried. Thank you very much. Item 6, déclaration d'intérêt pécuniaire. Hearing none. Item 7, adoption of the minutes of the regular council minutes of April 6, 2021. Motion to approve the following minutes as presented. I need a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Lorrain, seconded by Councillor Ternowski. All those in favor?
Mike Ternowski, yes.
André, oui.
Jamie, yes.
Cindy Saucier, yes.
Thank you very much. Item is carried. Item 8, présentation, puis item 9, délégation, on n'a pas. Item 10, consent items.
J'aimerais juste pouvoir tirer C, le procès verbal des Comtés unis, parce que j'ai une question.
Oui, pas de trouble. So a motion that all items listed under consent items be received as presented. A, minutes of the Environmental Advisory Committee, February 3rd, 2021. B, minutes of the Community Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, February 8, 2021. C, minutes of the United Counties of Prescott and Russell, February 24th, 2021. And D, the pay list for March 2021. So I need a mover and a seconder to put them on the table. Moved by Conseiller Brisson, seconded by Councillor Ternowski. Conseiller Brisson is asking to remove item C. So moved by Conseiller Brisson to remove item C. Do I have a seconder? Conseiller Lorrain. Everybody's okay with removing item C?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So we'll vote on A, B, and D at this point.
Mike Ternowski, yes.
André, oui.
Jamie, yes.
Cindy Saucier, yes.
Perfect, thank you very much. Item C will now put on the table and we'll have questions. Conseiller Brisson to move it on the table and need a seconder just to put it on the table. Councillor Ternowski. OK, vas-y, Conseiller Brisson.
Oui, il parlait dans les minutes that they were designing some road for the, pour les véhicules tout-terrain. Je croyais que c'était la province qui disait que tous les chemins étaient déjà désignés pour les tout-terrains, puis que si une municipalité ne le voulait pas, il fallait qu'il se retire. Fait que c'est juste une clarification que je voulais avoir là-dessus. Là.
Oui, si je m'en rappelle bien, puis peut-être Madame Bordeaux peut me corriger. Dans ce cas ici, c'est que ça a été des chemins désignés par le Conseil des Comtés unis pour allouer ces certains chemins-là parce qu'ils ne voulaient pas les autres chemins. So, I'm not sure. Je pourrais vérifier. Je peux te revenir là-dessus, conseiller Brisson. mais je sais qu'il y a eu des changements au niveau des règlements. Mais Madame Bourdeau, te rappelles-tu de ce dossier-là? Ben, pas celui des comtés spécifiquement, mais le règlement, c'est bylaw pour ATVs?
Oui, mais depuis, il y a eu un changement à la loi provinciale qui indique justement ce que M. Brisson a dit, là. Que les ATV ont le droit sur les chemins municipaux, à moins que la municipalité passe un règlement disant qu'ils n'ont pas le droit. Un peu comme les motoneiges.
C'est pour ça que j'étais juste surpris que les comtés unis allouent les choses. Y avait-tu déjà voté pour les enlever?
Ben, je pense que ce qui arrive, c'est qu'il y avait probablement déjà un point, on avait mis un règlement en place pour enlever, puis ces chemins-là, ils ont décidé d'être ajoutés après.
Non, c'est juste pour clarifier, parce que j'avais eu la question si ceux avec des ATV pouvaient se promener partout. Puis là, moi, j'avais pour acquis qu'on pouvait.
Oui, si tu veux m'envoyer un courriel là-dessus, je peux juste copier le directeur au niveau des comtés unis, puis il va être capable de clarifier pour ça.
C'est parfait, merci.
Merci. D'autres questions là-dessus? I'll call for the vote.
Mr. Mayor, can you just advise who was the mover? I got Councillor Ternowski as seconder.
C'est à conseiller Brisson.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder. I'll call for the vote.
Mike Ternowski, oui.
André, oui.
Jamie, yes.
Cindy Sosa, yes.
Parfait, merci beaucoup. We will now move on to item 11, reports from departments and council committees. At this point in time, I just want to remind everybody that we do have a question period on the meeting of the day at item 14. So please make sure to state your name and address for the public record. If you use the anonymous function, your question will not be addressed. Alors, à l'item 14, il y a une période de questions. Vous pouvez mettre votre question en ligne à ce point-ci, puis votre adresser au numéro 14, mais faites certain d'inclure votre nom, votre adresse. Si c'est pas indiqué, la question ne va pas être discutée. So, and make sure these are questions on the meeting of the day, so it actually has to be something on the agenda. Thank you. So, on va commencer avec numéro 11A. Mise à jour de l'impact du COVID-19 sur le budget 2020, rapport FS 07-2021, que le Conseil reçoit le rapport FS 07-2021 daté du 19 avril 2021 à des fins d'information. Monsieur Leduc, Monsieur Godin, good evening.
Bonsoir, Monsieur le Maire. Bonsoir, cher membre du Conseil. So this is basically an information report just for council's information. Last year we brought a few reports to council to kind of give estimates, forecast of the budget implications caused by COVID-19. Now that the year is done and that we're almost done with our year-end exercise, we wanted to bring council an update. This is regarding 2020 numbers. Essentially what we're saying here is that the cost, either loss of revenue or additional costs or cost savings, the net impact for all the departments was about $832,000. About $546,000 of that is for taxation support departments, and also that we did receive grants from the province that pretty much covers the whole impact. And like we said in previous reports, we did have some savings and some additional taxation revenue that we had identified in the operational budget. So those were still used to minimize the impact of that the COVID implications. So we were in a position to transfer a lot of those grant revenues to reserves at the end of the year, and council will have some funds available for ongoing COVID impacts in 2021. So the information is in the report. We've updated those same graphs that we've presented earlier. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that council may have at this point in time.
Thank you very much, Monsieur Godin. Councillor Ternowski.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Godin, pour un beau rapport. J'avais juste une petite question. Si je regarde, il y a une couple de lignes qui sont de même, disons, ligne 431 pour l'eau. It shows the loss. It shows loss going up and down, and I thought this was a cumulative worksheet, and so I'm not sure I fully understand how it could reduce and then increase if it's cumulative. Am I missing some? And like, it's just probably because I don't fully understand it. So that's my first question. I have one more after that.
Okay, Monsieur Godin.
Through Ms. Mayor, donc oui, it's a good question, Councillor Tarnowski. There are a few departments where it will go up and down, and the reasoning behind that is while there are some additional costs and some loss of revenues, there are also some savings. There are some cost savings that did happen along the way. Specifically for the water department, I'm not sure exactly at this point in time what would cause it to go back down later in the year. But in some departments, there was some layoffs, maybe some staff or some hires that were done later, due specifically or directly by COVID. So that's what would kind of explain why some departments go up. It's accumulated going up, and then sometimes it might go down, and that might be explained by a certain position that wasn't hired, or maybe layoffs, or maybe a certain conference that wasn't attended because of the COVID situation.
Okay, thank you. And one more point, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring out one more point. When you look at these numbers, I mean, they're numbers for us to look at, but I want to acknowledge that behind a lot of these savings that we're able to do are positions that were, people that were laid off and so on. So I just want to recognize the difficult decisions that were made by department heads and by the various areas to try to safeguard our financials in doing that. Like, for example, the library and other departments like Parks and Rec and so on. So very tough decisions that were made, and to the benefit of our ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other questions, members of council? Hearing, seeing none. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Godin. We'll move on to the next item. Item B, summary of sponsorships, advertising, and donations for 2020, report FS08 2021. That council receives report FS08 2021 dated April 19, 2021 for information purposes. Questions, comments, members of council? No questions. Anything to add to this file?
Non, merci, Monsieur Maire.
Parfait, merci beaucoup. On va aller à la prochaine item, item C. Rapport sur les applications d'octroi 2020 Q4, rapport FS09 2021. Que le conseil reçoit le rapport FS09 2021 daté du 19 avril 2021 pour information seulement. Questions, membres du conseil? Questions from members of council on this one? No, pretty standard report. We see this often enough. Anything to add, Monsieur Godin?
Non, merci, Monsieur Maire.
Parfait, merci beaucoup. Next item, item D, summary of purchases awarded over 25,000, report FS 10-2021. The council receives report FS 10-2021 dated April 19, 2021 for information purposes. Questions, comments, members of council? Hearing, seeing none. Anything to add, Mr. Godin?
Oui, merci, Monsieur Maire. So nothing to add regarding the results that are presented, but I did want to bring to council's attention that following certain discussions that we've had and inquiries, we did decide to add a column to this report. So there's a minor tweaking to the format. We've added the actual final invoice that's allocated to that contract. So you'll see the budget that we have for the project. You'll see the contract value that was awarded, as well as the final invoice. So if ever there were change orders, or if the final invoice was higher than the bid, well, you would see that information here. We wanted to bring this forward to council because I know there were a few questions sometimes about sometimes there was large variances between bids, and would that implicate that we would expect to have higher costs? Well, we wanted to present here the final cost of the project, the contracts as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Monsieur Godin. No further questions. We'll move on to the next item. Item E, one-time doubling of federal gas tax, report FS 11 2021. That council receives report FS 11 2021 dated April 19, 2021, and approves the allocation of the additional gas tax funding, $503,673, to be applied in part towards the paving of additional road segment, St. Thomas Road from Rustland to Dead End, as well towards the financing of the capital project C0340 21004 Small St. Joseph Bridge. I'll ask that this item be removed from the consent vote, and we'll vote on this one separately. questions, comments, members of council on this one? Conseiller Lorrain?
Yeah, just a quick question. Like, do we know where the decision came from in terms of which roads, which extra work was going to be done? Was it just next on the list, or were these just picked out from somewhere?
Thank you very much, Conseiller Lorrain. I believe it's in regards to one of the possible options that was presented to council earlier in the year. I think we had a delegation presentation on that road. Monsieur Bourgon, can you confirm?
Merci, Monsieur Mayor. So yeah, exactly. That was the one of the options presented to council for as an extra road to be paved with the extra 1% of taxation. There's already half of that segment that was identified in our paving plan. So with the other half representing some operational costs yearly to maintain, we recommend to council just to add part of this year's paving budget.
Okay, merci beaucoup, Monsieur Bourgon. Any follow-up question?
Yeah, please. Are there any other roads that we're doing in 2021 that have similar roads around them that might also be roads that should be done? I'm just trying to make sure we're thinking of all the different options.
Yeah, thank you. Monsieur Bourgon, anything come to mind?
I would have, like, from the 2021 nearby project, there would be other options, but in this case, since we already present that one to council in December, that's why we're recommending this one. We did, the tender did offer some really good pricing, and that's even if we do have jobs throughout the township at different ends.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Saucier?
Yeah, I just remembered also that we did also receive sort of a delegation from other residents as well. So I just want to make sure, like, I know Leclerc McDonald Road, you know, they were complaining about the dust and the, I guess the depth of the gravel and things like that. So just that it's on our radar as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this one is really in regards because we were doing a portion of the road already. That's why it was just to extend that little section because there was operational costs involved. We're talking, this is the street that's probably the most north to the township on the other side of the highway. So there is a benefit to moving forward with that as well. I'm going to request this one. I did request this one will be pulled out. I understand the additional funds going towards the payment financing for the capital bridge, but I'd like to take a portion of that money and put it aside for traffic calming measures. I think that we've heard a lot of complaints over the last year and a half, especially with COVID, about traffic concerns such as Central Park, Saint-Augustin, Saint-Naud being very, very busy, and speed concerns. If council is in agreement, I would be putting forward an amendment, something along the lines that, you know, maybe $100,000 be of these funds be used, put aside for traffic calming options that the staff can bring a report back to council. You know, it could be speed humps, not speed bumps, because those are very small, but the longer wide ones, I think that a few areas could benefit from those. So I'll be making that amendment when we vote on this later, but just to give you a little bit of information, just because I think that, you know, yes, you know, I say 100,000, if only $20,000 of that is spent, then the rest can go back on the financing. I have no issues with that, but I just want to make sure that we have some funds to address some of the key critical points for traffic concerns on those roads. So we can have that discussion later on. Any other questions, comments on this file? No? Okay, we'll move on to the next.
Yeah, you couldn't see me.
Sorry, yeah, your camera's off. I don't see you. Yeah, go ahead, Conseiller Lorrain.
I would, I think that's a great idea. I fully support it. I think, but I would also probably like to see that there may be maintained a reserve for additional measures in other areas that would come up as we go, and we always get requests to review certain areas, so have funds available in case the speeds are you know, we start with the speed radars, and then we move forward to different options. Well, I think that maintaining a small fund there as well. So as an example, if 20,000 fixed everything right now, then maintain another 10 or 15 or 20,000 in a reserve, put the rest back onto the debt. I'm okay with that. But I think so that we don't have to go looking for money down the road if we need it to help calm some additional areas that were unforeseen or not brought forward right away this year. So.
Okay, great idea. That can be, if we give that direction to the administration, that can definitely be part of the report to come in the near future. Perfect, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to the next item. Item F, projet NOMO-MAI, rapport PIC 04-2021. Que le Conseil reçoit le rapport PIC 04-2021 daté du 19 avril 2021 et approuve tel que recommandé dans ce rapport de donner des instructions aux agents chargés de l'exécution des règlements municipaux dans le cadre d'un projet pilote de ne pas appliquer l'article 2E du règlement 88-2012 sur les normes de propriété pour le mois de mai 2021 et que toute observation et contentieux soins partagés avec le comité sur l'environnement afin qu'un rapport de mise à jour sur l'avenir de ce projet pilote soit présenté au Conseil à une date ultérieure. Questions, comments, members of council? Councillor Brisson and Councillor Saucier.
Yep, just unmuting. Okay, just making sure that it's only a pilot project at that place, because not to encourage it everywhere, because I'm one that is really for the preservation of bees and bubble bees, but keeping just the grass long, I'm really skeptical, because on grass, there's no flowers. And there will be not cutting for all the month of May. That will mean that it's as if it was hay. So just to cut it, you need a mower after, and they might have problem with rats and everything. So I would encourage more, if there's something to do to encourage bees, I will really encourage for people to have bush and flowers, but just to make sure that it's only at that place also that they have.
Okay, so just for clarification, Conseil Brisson, correct me if I'm wrong, Madame Bordeaux, this is all we're saying is that we don't want to enforce the property standards if people choose not to cut their grass in the month of May, but it's totally up to individuals. We're not telling the community, don't cut your grass. You're looking for direction from council. It's okay that if people aren't cutting their grass in the month of May, that we won't be going there for giving them a ticket to do so. Is that correct, Madame Bordeaux?
Yes, that's it. So it's anybody within the township of Russell who chooses not to cut their grass. We wouldn't go and enforce our clean yard bylaw in relation to grass, only that section. So it's a request that the older tractors made to us, asking that we oversee that section of the bylaw. So we can't just choose to ignore it. We need a direction from council. So basically that's where it came from.
Okay, so it's not telling people don't cut your grass. It's just if you choose not to cut your grass, that's your choice. Bylaw, if council approves, bylaw won't be hounding you because of that. If there's complaints that come in saying my neighbor didn't cut the grass, it's long. Well, for the month of May, they're allowed to do so. Councillor Saucier.
I actually love this initiative. I actually attended a workshop this morning by Dr. David Peters-O'Reilly. He's a biologist at the University of Ottawa, and it was saving pollinators, and that's exactly what they were recommending, a no-mow zone. So I was even thinking as a township, we could maybe even have an area where it's a no-mow zone, because in May, the first flowers are clover and also dandelions. And dandelions attract pollinators. They're food for bees, they're food for butterflies. And they were talking about all the endangered species, like the bumblebee is very rare right now, and also, well, we know monarchs, but many species of butterflies. And another thing that ties into this, which I was, hoping to get into the plan of the accessibility park for Jonathan Pitt, is a little butterfly garden that would attract pollinators. So I think it's a great initiative, and I'm also part of the Butterfly Way project, which is with the David Suzuki Foundation. And, I've been taking courses monthly, and this is one thing that they recommend, that schools have been doing it too, having little no-mow zones and things like that. So I'm fully in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Saucier. I think this will be a pilot project to see how it goes. I think currently we probably have a contract with our grass cutter for all our properties. So I don't think we can create a no-mow zone right now on our lands, but definitely something to consider after this pilot project and see where council wants to go with that. Any further questions? Councillor Saucier?
Sorry. Yeah, if I could just add, like sometimes, even like little medians or certain areas, sometimes I've seen it now, the city of Ottawa is doing it too, just having certain areas where they're not cut just for those reasons solely. And the other thing that was interesting, it said 1 of every 3 bites of food that we eat comes from pollinators. So, we're feeding ourselves too. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Other questions, comments on this file? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the next item. Merci, Madame Bordeaux. Item G, water allocation, 180 Limoges Road in Limoges, report ISWAT 02-2021. That council receives report ISWAT 02-2021, dated April 19th, 2021. And that council allocates a requested 0.65 municipal water unit for the 180 Limoges Road in Limoges. Questions, comments, members of council? Pretty standard stuff. Seeing none, anything to add, Monsieur Bourgon?
Non, merci.
Parfait, merci beaucoup. Next item, item H, exemption pour lumière d'El en brun, rapport PR 03-2021. Que le conseil reçoit le rapport PR 03-2021 daté du 19 avril 2021 et accorde une exemption à la politique d'achat pour attribuer le projet André Clément Electric Inc. Questions, commentaires, questions, comments, members of council, conseiller Lorrain and Councillor Tarnowski.
Yeah, I've asked Madame Camille to pull this one out so that we can vote on it separately. As we all know, I'm not a fan of sole sourcing and only doing so at the most extreme reasons. And I don't see this as an extreme reason. I don't see why we can't go to tender on this and get a price on it to make sure we're maximizing. So I'm not in favor of the exemption. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Tarnowski.
Councillor Lorrain, you beat me to it. I was going to say the exact same thing. And my only one added question to that was also to make sure that that type of lighting will be adequate enough for a ballpark, because there was some in the information that was presented, it felt that it would be adequate enough, but it wasn't. It just wasn't clear. So I wouldn't mind clarification on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Through you, Monsieur Leduc, Madame Guittard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I do understand the position of council members. At this point, if I can reassure Mr. Councillor Tarnowski, yes, it will be sufficient. We have a full description of the lighting that is suggested to be replacing the old highlight lights that are there. One of the main reasons why we're asking the exemption is mostly the servicing of the replacement of those lights. We wrote our position on when we did do this kind of upgrade in both arenas. We ran into some issues because obviously it's old wiring. You're talking about in the arenas was like 60 years old. In the ball field, it's about 40 years old. It's the original lights. Unfortunately, there's not very many electricians that are aware of that wiring because it's old, and there's not too many older electrician companies, if I can say. And also, André Clément Electric is right now the electrician that we usually use at Township. He's on the pre-qualified list. On the municipal pre-qualified list, we do not have any other electrician right now. It's only subcontractors. So this is why we felt it was a reasonable request to do the council to have the electrician that is used to our facilities, used to those installations to do the work. And also, Monsieur Clément did do the whole request for to get the incentive from Hydro, which we have been confirmed for $12,595, which is a substantial amount. So that's why we felt that for all these reasons, we thought that we could award this contract to Monsieur Clément.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madame Guittard. Conseiller Brisson?
Oui, puis je vois que c'est pour un contrat de 45 000 $. Puis justement, c'est pour ça que moi je supporte parfaitement, vu qu'il connaît déjà tout le système électrique existant. C'est beau de dire que les autres peuvent tout de même arriver un petit peu plus bas pour essayer de prendre la job, mais que là, ils vont être obligés d'aller leur demander, puis que ça fait de la frustration. Puis c'est quasiment du opérationnel, là, ça qu'on fait. Fait que c'est pour ça que dans une situation comme ça, surtout pour ce montant-là, surtout, moi, j'ai aucun problème d'allouer ça à M. Clément pour faire changer les lumières. Comme que je dis, c'est pratiquement du opérationnel. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Conseiller Brisson. Councillor Saucier and then Councillor Larin.
Yeah, well, all our street lights are LEDs, and so there'd be substantial savings in energy efficiency. And the other question I had was, is Mr. Excuse my ignorance, but is this a local company, Monsieur Clément?
Yes, it's a local electrical company.
Okay, merci.
Merci. Conseiller Larin?
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. So please don't take the fact that I've asked to pull this out and I'm going to vote against the exception to say that I'm not in favor of LED, like the actual lights that are there. Fully support the initiative, but for me, I can't agree to the sole sourcing of the contract, even though I understand why. There's another piece of me that is concerned with the fact that we only have one electrician in this municipality that's pre-approved. That to me doesn't make sense. We should have more than one pre-approved electrician in our entire township. There's more than one that is out there today, so I'm assuming we should have more than that. And the last piece that I want to say is one of the biggest things that I keep getting is the lack of availability for contracts within the municipality for people to bid on. So I know Councillor Brisson, you said, well, it's such a small amount, it's $45,000. Well, it's a $60,000 project. So it's 0.5% in the budget overall, essentially. So it's fairly significant. And that's why we have a purchasing policy. We have a purchasing policy for items over a certain dollar amount that you should be going to tender. So to me, this isn't an urgency. We should be going. And if the person is that strongly for this, they should be able to bid it successfully in that circumstance. So to me, I want to see that we're getting full value for it. Understand the circumstances, Madame Guittard, but unfortunately, I can't support it.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments? So just for Monsieur Leduc, allez-y.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Lyon raised the issue that we have only one electrician. It's not to say the administration has not made its position known that we're looking for pre-qualified firms. We actually have had that issued that request, and no firms, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, have responded positively or to submit their application as a pre-qualified. So I understand your argument, Councillor Lorrain, but I think the administration has done that initiative to try to get others to participate. You're correct, and having only one is a risk that we manage in the mid to long term for sure. So I believe Mr. Bourgon can confirm if that was done and when was the last time we've done that.
Monsieur Bourgon?
Merci, Mr. Mayor. The last time that we, I would have to go back, but I believe it's about 3 years ago. But the pre-qualification package is always available. So any contractor, it would be a plumber, an electrician, could ask and fill out our documentation to get pre-qualified for the municipality.
Okay, thank you very much, Monsieur Bourgon. So just for clarification, this is asking for the exemption to the purchasing policy. If ever this was voted down, it's not the project that's voted down, it's simply that you would have to go to a tender process. Now, if it goes to a tender process, would this be on bids and tender, Monsieur Bourgon?
Mr. Mayor, so yes, it would be on bids and tender.
Okay, so on bids and tender can basically be open up to anybody everywhere that could potentially get this contract. Okay, thank you very much. Conseiller Brisson?
Juste une question. Mais je pensais que comme pour les contrats, qu'il fallait qu'ils soient déjà pré-approuvés quand même pour pas que ça soit monsieur n'importe qui arrive puis qui met une soumission. Je pensais qu'on avait une liste pour d'autres ingénieurs toujours, puis je pensais que c'était la même chose pour juste m'éclaircir sur ce sujet-là.
Oui, Monsieur Bourgon, je crois que le bid and tender, il y a une partie du processus et faire certains qui sont qualifiés pour faire la job.
Oui, puis pour pas limiter aucun contracteur, lorsqu'on fait un appel d'offres sur Bids and Tender là, qui est public comme ça, on invite quand même tout le monde. Puis le contracteur qui se retrouve pas sur notre liste de préqualification a tout de même la chance là, de remplir la documentation puis d'être préqualifié. Donc encore une fois, on le fait aussi pour quand on va au public là, pour que tout le monde ait leur chance quand même. Donc quand on va de cette façon-là, publiquement, tout le monde a quand même leur chance.
OK, merci. Monsieur Leduc?
This topic happens often, and this comment comes up quite often, Mr. Mayor, members of council, regarding encouraging local companies. Unfortunately, now in our free trade agreements world now, this is no longer applicable. In our previous bylaw, we had that clause that would favor local businesses over any other bids and tenders, but this is no longer legal. And this is why our past version or our recent version of this purchasing policy does no longer allow or favor local businesses. It has to be open to everyone, and we can't favor locally. That's why in this way we help somebody in locally to have a job.
Right. Thank you very much. So yeah, by going against our purchasing policy, we can give the job locally, but as soon as it goes to tender, depending on what the results of the tender is, we might find ourselves in a situation where we are taking a Montreal company or an Ottawa company, or maybe for a few $1,000 savings. But okay, Councillor Tarnowski?
Just a clarification on that point, but we like a township still maintains the ability to write the tender to certain specifications, i.e. if we want 24-hour service, if we want 3-day or 2-day response, if there is maintenance issues and so on, correct?
I believe we have that flexibility to write those items, if you will. But I think Monsieur Leduc's point is you can't write it in a way that would be clearly beneficial to local companies to have the upper hand.
Thank you.
Okay. D'autres questions, commentaires? So Conseiller Lorrain's asked that this item be separate, so we'll vote on this separately. Next item I, zoning bylaw amendment report PD 2021, vacant lots located on future Gamble Drive in the Russell Trail subdivision. That council receives report PD 2020-21 dated April 19, 2021, and approves the zoning bylaw amendment 2018-094 for blocks 97, 98, and 99 on Plan 50R-353 from Residential 1A, R1A, to Residential 3, Exception 51, R3-53, to permit construction of apartment buildings and to limit the maximum permitted height on the subject property to 12 meters and not more than 3 stories. I'll move on. Madame Tremblay, I know this is a little bit different than what the planning committee suggested, so can you bring us through this one?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Yes, as mentioned, following the public meeting and the committee member, the planning committee, we've kind of not changed the recommendation because we're still recommending it, but we are we've listened to concerns of the members of the public, and we've also had discussion with surrounding property owners, and by reviewing our official plan and the official plan guidelines, especially in the section of the compatibility of the design guidelines of the OP, we kind of tweaked a bit the resolution to, and the recommendation of the planning department to limit the height of the buildings to be proposed to 3 stories instead of 5 as permitted in the zoning. So I added as well information in the report on the surrounding properties. So in the report, as you can see, I added maps showing, for example, what's surrounding block 89 and 87 and 88. So as you can see, facing block 98, there's in blue, you could see that there's 2-story townhouses. The pink, which is the subdivision north of that, I'll just wait until the map is coming on, and it's going to be easier for me to explain. It's coming soon. So this one here. So as you can see, north of block 98 is mostly singles. And then you could see at the back, that property is surrounding by, if we could go up just a bit more on the previous map, please. Yeah, so this one. So as you can see behind block 98, there's a street, and the red is representing single detached dwelling that are still vacant and unsold, what have been confirmed by the developer. However, we still need to consider those houses are going to be built with single detached dwellings. So basically block 98 and 97 are surrounding by single that are either vacant. The pink is showing that are singles that are being built or already built. The blue is built townhouses. The green is vacant, but it's going to be as well townhouse, and the yellow, orange is semis, and the properties are still vacant. Behind the north part of the red, you can see it's the retention pond. So it's basically saying it's the park and the open space. And if we could go back to the, go at the map below, please. You'll see that block 99, sorry, is completely located at the east side of the property, and it's close to the park as well as the Edie Road. As you can see, it's well surrounding as well by single detached dwelling that are vacant and not sold. And south of that block 99 is a future subdivision that will be brought in front of council soon. So the road, the Gamble, will exit and continue on that block of subdivision. Okay. So that's information that was with, sorry, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Okay, so in the report, as if we go below as well, I included elevation plans of surrounding properties so that we could have a bit of a indication of what's surrounding those blocks. So the first elevation is block 18, which is the one that is facing block 98. And as you can see, this is the height of this block is so this is, yeah, so block 18. And basically what you're seeing here is the height is about 8.74 meter. So it's important as well. I included the information in the report of how we measure the height. So the height is not at the peak of the roof, it's in the middle of the bridge and the eaves. So basically at the middle elevation of the truss. That's how the zoning bylaw measures the height. So if you're looking at this building, the middle of the trusses is we've measured on the plan, so it's an average of 8.74 meters. So the other elevation that I've included is the elevation on block 17. So block 17 is facing Central Park as well. And this is a bit lower. So as you can see, those are townhouses and the average height is 8.4 meter, and again measured from the same point as the previous elevation.
And what you're proposing in your recommendation is a maximum 3-story of 12 meters.
Yeah, exactly. So you could do the math for the difference in between what's surrounding, and there's also the single detached dwelling, which is the house that is north of block 98. That house is adjoining completely directly, and as you can see here, this is a 2-story house, and the average height is about the same, 8.2, I would say. So it's about the same difference as what we could see on the townhouses. Those houses are limited to the height of 3-story as well. So I just wanted to mention they don't have the permission to go up to 5-story.
Okay.
So in the report, I've also included some information about the planning responsibility. So yeah, under the Planning Act, I know that we had a lot of comments regarding this application. So I felt it was important for members of council to understand that we are regulated in the way that we're proceeding for our public notices. So basically the Planning Act is requiring that we have the obligation to send a public notice to the residents by mail that are in so that's the section here, that are located in a 120 meter buffer from the properties that are the subject properties of the application. So in this case, we had to do the 20 meter from block 98, 97 and the block 99. And as well, so we have a system that calculates at 120 meters, so it's not subject to the staff that is doing the buffer, but it's basically from a program that we're using that determined that 120 meter buffer. And as well, for those people that are not included in 120 meter buffer, we have the obligation to put signs on the property to advise people that, like I just mentioned, that would not have received the notice in the mail, then that they have entitled to participate to public meeting and as well request the information. So that's why we have the obligation to reach as much as resident as possible. So that's why we have to proceed with both way of notifying the resident of that application. I've also included information about the notice of appeal. So basically, once council decide make the final decisions, we have the obligation to send a notice of passing of bylaw. That notice of passing, we have a 20-day deadline from the day that the notice is sent and not from the day of decision. The Planning Act changed in the years, so right now we have the obligation to send that notice of passing of bylaw, which would explain the appeal process and the decision of council. We have the obligation to send it to the person in public body that make an application to receive the notice, to each person in public body that filed a written request to be notified of the decision, and any prescribed person or body. So that means in this section, the agencies, but we are still sending, since the act change, we felt that the planning department, and we still are doing the old way, we're still sending the notice of decision to the same 120 meter resident that received the notice of public meeting. They will receive the notice of decision of the passing of the bylaw. And as well, like I've in the section below, we explain how to appeal to the LPAC. So basically, it explained in the notice how much it costs and who is entitled to appeal. I've included as well the explanation of the planning department recommendation, the justification. So basically in our official plan that was approved back in 2010, those properties were identified as medium density in the 2010 official plan. Back then in the 2010 official plan, we had the restriction in the medium density, a limit of housing of 17 units per hectare. So the density was lower to start, but they could go at the same number of density as permitted now. And because we didn't have any ladder truck in our official plan, we had the restriction that every building in the township of Russell would be limited to 3-story in height. In 2010, we've approved our new official plan. The new official plan did not change the designation of those property. However, the density permitted on those property changed as per the entire township of Russell. So now the permitted density for those blocks are 36 units per hectare. There's no more limitation in height. It's only in the zoning bylaw because obviously, as you know, we had the ladder truck and therefore we didn't have the height limitation included in the official plan. I've also included what it means, 36 units per hectare. So basically what it like to be able for the developer to meet the 36 units per hectare, that means they would have to build a minimum of 18 units on block 99 and 98 and 10 units on block 98. Sorry, it's 18 units on block 99 and 97 and 10 units on block 98 because 98 is a bit smaller in size. I just want to bring council's attention as well that in the zoning bylaw, there's also limitation that would regulate the number of units. So basically in our zoning bylaw, it says to determine the size of the property that you need to meet at least 115 square meters per unit to determine if your property is big enough. So basically, if we do the same math for block 98 and 99 and 97, that would translate for the 115 square meters regulation to 44 units, and block 98 would be 24 unit. So that's really achievable when you limit your height to 3-story, and that was my main preoccupation, is that I didn't want to limit the height if I knew that they would not be able to meet the proposed density, because we didn't want to go back and do an official plan amendment. So basically, it's easy to look at cases that we've been seeing in the township of Russell that would limit the height to 3-story, but they would be still able to meet the proposed density in the official plan. In our official plan as well, and I'll get to the end soon, we are required as planner to make sure that the infill and intensification project meets the criteria of the compatibility, and we have a list of criteria that needs to be met. So one of the major concern that we had is looking at the height and the mass. So basically in the opinion of the planning department, the permitted height, so I'm just saying the permitted height because obviously we don't know what's the height of the proposed buildings under the R3 provision would not be compatible with the neighboring residential development. So mostly like we saw earlier, 2-story in height. In considering the provision of the R3 zone, the zoning bylaw would anticipate that the scale and the mass of the permitted building would be considerably larger compared to the single detached dwelling to the north, the subject property and the townhouse located to the west, and as well, I heard that the properties, what we saw and read earlier, it doesn't really matter because they're not built, but the compatibility factor would still apply to those houses once it's built, once it's sold. So we need to consider the permitted use, which is single detached dwelling on those property, to evaluate the compatibility criteria. So therefore, the planning staff is also of the opinion that if we limit to 3-story in height, so that means, like you've mentioned, Mr. Mayor, earlier, to 12 meter in height max, and impose as a zoning restriction that the proposed development would be more compatible in terms of height with the surrounding properties. There's also criteria that we could evaluate if we had a better idea of what is being proposed, such as vehicular access, outdoor amenity, parking area, shadowing, lighting, and setbacks. So those are all compatibility criteria that we need to consider. Unfortunately, we cannot review and comment on since the developer did not submit a proposal with the building as part of the zoning bylaw application amendment. The developer in this case told me that they would in the case of site plan, and that they were not there yet. So basically, it's hard for the planning department to say that it's compatible, that it's not, with information that we don't have at this moment. With the information that we have based on the zoning in the height, we felt that the height and the mass was not compatible, but setback, for example, where the building is going to be located, is it going to be front of Gamble, front of Central Park, where the rear yard was located will be a big factor to determine if it's compatible with the surrounding properties, where the entrance, where the parking. So it's really important for us to know exactly where it is to be able to evaluate those criteria. So I've included as well in the zoning just what I was explaining earlier, the way that we calculate the height. So obviously, if it's a flat roof, it's going to be different than if it's a peak roof, because the height is calculated differently. So in order to be able to recommend the height without limit, then we would have to get more information, and I would be more comfortable of recommending it. If, for example, in our zoning bylaw, we have the transition. So basically, we already have the provision that if it's a more than 3-story, at the 3rd story, you need to back up your building 2 meters and then continue to the 4th floor and the 5th floor to ensure the transition. It's a way to establish a transition and make sure that it doesn't impede on privacy of other owners that are surrounding the proposal. So I'm comfortable with the recommendation of limiting the height, because we're going to limit a lot of issue by having that restriction, and it's still going to meet the OP designation of the 36 units per hectare, and all the other regulation under the zoning bylaw will be dealt with at the time of the site plan. So that's why we're recommending the limit of the height to 3-story for all blocks.
Thank you very much, Madame Tremblay. I think is very well presented, very professional. I know it's not always easy with certain files that, not everybody completely understands. Ultimately, we do have rules that the province puts in place that as a municipality we have to follow. We don't necessarily have the right to overrule the province. So I appreciate your professionalism on this report, and I appreciate that you took the time and listened to our residents and adjusted the report accordingly. If I haven't mentioned it yet, Madame Camré-Laflamme, I believe this item will be voted on separately, so if we could pull that one out. I'll open the floor for questions, members of council. Councillor Saucier, then Councillor Tarnowski.
Thank you. Well, like I say, we had a lot of concerns with this file, so thank you, Madame Tremblay, for such a thorough report and helping us to understand it. Again, I was looking at it must be compatible with the neighboring development in terms of height and mass, and then also in the OP that you mentioned, that item that I had cited too here, 3.2.3 of section C. So I just want to make sure that even at the 3-story, that it won't be, I think one of the concerns was the shadowing, and also will the balconies be like looking into people's backyards at that location? I think that was a big concern for a lot of these single home dwellings that, built there and decided to move there, and then that they were concerned that this was going to sort of be right in the neighborhood. And also, have we considered, I know we have to do a traffic study, but the the parking and the roads, as that road is so busy as it is. And also the question came up, sorry if I'm asking too many things at once, but the depreciation of the value of their homes have we looked into that? Is that actually a fact or not?
Thank you very much, Councillor Associé. I'll throw 2 cents in there, Madame Tremblay, correct me if I'm wrong. In regards to the traffic study was done for the whole subdivision at full build out, and the project can accept the amount of traffic from these multi-res buildings. Is that correct?
Yes, you're correct, Mr. Mayor. The entire subdivision was accounted for as a full built out for both subdivisions. So it's, in this case, it needs to be considered jointly, because basically we have the subdivision of Mélanie Construction tying into Central Park as with Mr. Corvinelli's subdivision as well. So yes, we did, both of the developer did consider the full built out, and as well, I don't know if Mr. Bourgon wants to jump in, but the Township of Russell did, on top of those 2 studies, do our own study to look at the impact of the proposed growth that we were seeing in the village of Russell, to see the impact on the major intersection in the village of Russell based on the full built out of both subdivisions.
Okay, thank you. And in regards to the assessment question, the township doesn't do assessments. That's through MPAC. To my knowledge, I don't believe that's a criteria for impact. Is there an apartment building next to you? I think they look at houses in similar size, rooms, square footage, that kind of stuff. That's how they determine what the value of the property is. So I don't think MPAC looks at those. Madame Tremblay, I'm not sure if you can add anything to that question.
No, I think you're correct, Mr. Mayor. And again, this question was asked many times at the public meeting. And as I mentioned, the planning department does not consider tax evaluation on our decision. Our decision is based on planning documents, and the fact that this was already designated back in 2010 as multi-residential units, they don't have any other choice than rezone to R3. So that's where we're leaning towards. It's not a question of permitting units on the R3, it's to rezone to be in compliance with our official plan.
And are these rentals? These units are rentals? It's not a condo.
Like at this point in time, I don't think the developers decided whether they're condos or they're apartments. I mean, realistically, like all the houses being sold in the subdivision, some people bought the houses to rent them out. Some people bought them to stay in them. I think that a rental property is quite possible, but I think, you know, that's up to the developer. Madame Tremblay?
Yes, you're correct, Mr. Mayor. The developer did not decide yet at this point if it's going to be rental or condominium. And I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat ourselves. Like for us, it's land use. It's apartments are not. So at this point, the process is the same. So it's to allow for higher density in a subdivision, which at this point, we don't control if it's apartments or if it's condos.
Okay, and so the 12 meters, which is about 40 feet, right? Sorry, I'm still in feet. So will that, like my question was, will that affect those properties that are right beside it, like with shadowing or being, you know, having people looking in your backyard? Are they that close?
That will be something looked at site plan, Madame Tremblay?
Yeah, correct, Mr. Mayor. So again, because we don't know where the facade of the building will be, so we don't know which setback will be applicable depending on where they're gonna put the frontage. However, we do have setback in accordance. So basically, if you have an apartment building, the setback for a side yard is bigger than if it was a single detached dwelling. So limiting to 3 would be in still the same as a house. Basically, the house is about the 2.5 story. And the setback, for example, for the interior setback would be 1.2 meter compared to a apartment building, which is 3 meter on the setback. So because it's permitted it to go a bit higher, then the setbacks are a bit bigger than a normal house. So that's why we're kind of comfortable in a way if we are limiting to 3, then it could be the setback would be representative of the height permitted.
Thank you very much, Madame Tremblay. We have other members of council that have questions as well. I believe Councillor Tarnowski, Conseiller Brisson, and Conseiller Lorrain.
Thank you very much. So yes, this was an interesting file, especially through the planning committee process. It's really too bad that this zoning wasn't addressed right away at the onset. This would have probably alleviated the situations, but that's a lesson learned, I guess, from all sides. From all the questions and communications that we've been receiving, I think there were three concern areas that I keep seeing over and over again. The concern for increased traffic, the lack of proper infrastructure, or the felt lack of proper infrastructure to support more residents there, and impact on property values. I'm comfortable with the traffic study and the results. I should say I'm relatively comfortable with that, because we did have discussions this winter about streets that are too busy now for a fire truck to get through. And so I'm a little bit concerned about that. So I wouldn't mind kind of revisiting that one. The infrastructure I'm very comfortable with. The impact on property values, I understand that this is not something that we're that from the planning perspective is something that we can comment on. But during one of the meetings, there was a question around that. It came out quite a few times, and it was said that we were going to be presented at this meeting with any research that was done in that area. So that's not being presented, and so I'm not entirely comfortable at this stage voting for it. This is kind of my point. I'm going to be asking, you gave us three options here. One of them is to defer the zoning bylaw amendment and decision on plans until the proposed buildings be submitted and be reviewed against compatibility criteria. I think that would give us some time to look at this information. It was asked of some residents, and we said that we would receive that information to review it, and I wouldn't mind seeing that information. And through the discussions through this process, I've heard the word unknown. Like just even tonight, we said, so many things are unknown at this stage. And I think based on that as well, I think that it's a good idea to wait until we have some more information about those actual buildings and the kind of buildings that are being proposed. There's too many unknowns at this stage. And I think if I was a resident on that street, I would have some concerns as well. So that's why I'm going to be proposing to go to option number 3 that was presented to us in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Conseiller Brisson.
Yeah, just to know, whenever it's a 3-story high apartment, you don't need by regulation any elevator. But whenever you arrive with a 4th or 5th floor, do you know if it's required by the law to have elevator?
Merci. Madame Tremblay, as-tu une réponse à celle-là?
I would have to double check in the building code. So the building code would be something that will have to be verified to confirm if we get to 4th or 5th story, if an elevator is required.
Yeah, but obviously whatever is required, the building would meet the building code.
Yeah, so it needs to meet the building code if it's required to have an elevator in the 4th and the 5th story, but for the entire building, if we get to 4 or 5 story.
Okay, thank you very much, Madame Tremblay. I'll just throw in, at this point in time, I do see some questions coming in. Please remember that you need to state your name and address in order to have your question addressed. So I see some questions raised, but with no name, so please state your name for the record, please. Next is Conseiller Lorrain.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This is a crazy file right now, and there's so many different things I would like to say or should be saying here, but I think the one thing that we can't lose sight of is the fact that this is a zoning request, and a lot of the items that are being asked or discussed are not necessarily zoning concerns or zoning questions. So, although I understand them and I've spoken to many residents, I live in this development as well, just further south, southwest, I guess you would say, to where these are going to go. So I do know exactly the impact that it would have. But we also have an obligation to consider the zoning application on its own. And that's where, for me, I've got to look at it and go, is there a reason in planning that I can deny or reject or approve any application, not just this one? So when I look at everything in this, so let's look at what we've talked about already tonight. We talked about, speed, traffic on Central Park. Looks like we're going to be addressing that and in other areas as well, separately, outside of a zoning request. When we talk about the traffic study, I'm confident that the 3 traffic studies that have been done by Melanie, by Corvinelli, and by the township have addressed the concerns of the full build out. Do I think that there's going to be, speeding on that street? There is now. So we need to address that, but we address that outside of this zoning request. And we've done that in, setting that reserve beside. Hopefully we do that tonight, and we look at those speed calming measures. And then we have to also look at what's been done in the past for this area. And, I'll echo Councillor Taranowski's concerns over when in any draft plan of subdivision do we assign zoning to those applications. And, do we just go R1 all the way across the board and wait for each phase to come up and deal with the zoning in each one? Or do you do it all at once when everything's on the table? And then if the proponent wants to make any changes in a specific phase, then it's borne upon them to make the request and go through the public consultations at that point in time based on the new request. This, for everything that's been said, this isn't a new request. This is a request that mirrors the application for subdivision agreement that's already been signed and approved by council, a official plan amendment that's already been put into place, and the draft plan of subdivision that was done back in 2005. Everything was all contemplated that these would be our 3 zones. Now I understand the biggest change that has happened over that period of time is the fact that our official plan has now given our 3 zones the ability to go to 5 stories. And the purchase of the ladder truck was the main factor. Now we have to remember, and I don't know which portion, and Monsieur Godin could probably correct me or make a statement to me, but I would believe a large portion of the purchase price of that ladder truck came from the development charges. So that was contemplated in the development charge study that was done, and these buildings were part of that. And that's why the developers paid into those development charges to pay for that ladder truck, understanding that was part of where the township was going at some point in time. That all being said, I agree with the application to restrict to 3 stories, because I think it makes sense to do so given the concern for blocks 97 and 98, which are the ones that are right on Central Park. I've asked to have this one removed because I'm gonna ask for the exception be for 99 being 4 stories, no exception, but 4 stories, so that we still control that height component for that. And my main reason for that is because I'm concerned over the result of an LPAT decision. If we go to 3 across the board, 3 stories that is, and the developer decides to object, and we go to LPAT, then they could go for 5 stories on all 3 blocks if they win. At least in this circumstance, we've got the 3 on 97 and 98, which are the ones on Central Park, and we can limit the height to 4 stories on 99. And I've been assured by the developer that they would not be objecting to that. So I think as a quote unquote compromise to the potential for an LPAT objection, I think on 99, a 4-story maximum height to me makes sense, so that we are controlling the height and not the developer. Because if it does happen to get objected to and gets overruled, and the developer is on the positive side, they can look at a 4-story or a 5-story on all 3 blocks. And I think that defeats the objective of what we're trying to do here. So while I would like to see 3, while I would have liked to see 3 on all 3 stories on all 3 limited, I have to weigh all scenarios in my decision. And it's exactly what I said to all the different people that I've spoken to, that I have to weigh all different aspects of it. And at this point in time, knowing what I know today versus what I knew last week even, I think that is the best option from our perspective. So I'll be making that amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Conseiller Lorrain. Appreciate the comments. Just for those who are watching, please remember this is the question is a question period. It's not a comment period. So if you have a question, please state it in a question format. If it's just a comment, then it won't be addressed. Conseiller Lorrain?
Sorry, I forgot to ask another question to Madame Tremblay, who may or may not be able to answer this question, but whenever we say apartment, in whether condo versus apartment, whenever we say apartment, does that necessarily mean low income? Because I know that I've seen that a lot in some of the correspondence that, oh my God, if it's an apartment, it's going to be a low income housing and whatnot. That's not necessarily the case, right? Or am I wrong?
I think with today's cost of construction, I'd be surprised if it was low-income housing. I'll speak to that a little bit after Madame Tremblay. Commentaire là-dessus, Madame Tremblay?
So you're correct, Mr. Lorrain. So when we talk about apartment, for us, again, it's land use. So it's the way that you're renting those apartments, and it's not selling by privately owned unit as part of the apartment building. So it doesn't refer to low income. It doesn't refer to retirement houses or 55 and above. So again, the planning department look at the type of building that is going to be permitted and the land use, and we don't control if it's rented, if it's sold, or to who they're selling it or renting it.
Okay. I can speak a little bit in regards to the United Counties, because the United Counties, that's where rental assistance comes from, in majority part. I know that a few years ago, the United Counties is more towards rent subsidies as opposed to giving funds to builders to build low-income housing. Since I've been at the United Counties, I can't recall a project where funds were given to build. Landlords have a tendency not to want to deal with low-income housing. They prefer to actually just have a collective full rent and let the resident get the rent subsidy they need from levels of government. So not a definitive answer. I mean, they could always go that route, but to my knowledge, I don't think either of these developers have ever developed low-income housing within the township borders. Madame Tremblay, tu veux ajouter quelque chose?
Yeah, so if I may add, I think I know where the comment is coming from. So in the report, we do refer to the provincial policy statement, and it's our responsibility as the township to make sure that we have all type of dwellings, all type of making sure that the rent is affordable for all type of families. So basically, it's our job, it's our responsibility to follow the PPS. So it's under the provincial policy, and we do refer to affordable housing in the PPS as a form that it's our responsibility to make sure that we have the stock of housing that would allow everybody, especially in this type of market where you have young families that they cannot afford their first house of $1 million. So we need to make sure that we have affordable housing, not in the sense of affordable, that we have families for their first house that would be able to buy houses in the township of Russell.
I think as well, Madame Tremblay, it's not only young families, it's older parents, parents who are looking to downsize, but to be close to their grandkids. They don't necessarily need the 2,500 square foot home anymore, but they'd like, a nice 1,200 square foot apartment. That way they can be close to their family. So there's a difference between affordable and low income, I think, is what you're getting to.
Yes, thanks.
Councillor Saucier.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to what Councillor Brisson had said. Yeah, definitely, if anything even was 4 stories, I think an elevator to make it accessible for all people would be something to consider. And I also kind of feel the same as Councillor Janowski. I just feel I don't know how I approve something when I don't have a site plan. I'm not sure what it is. I don't know what we're really voting on. And, they're asking for a zoning change. Well, it wasn't in the plan to have this type of buildings initially. And even the developer stated that himself, that he was opposed to that kind of building before. But now I understand the need because of like your comments, Madame Tremblay, like, people can't afford those big single family homes, especially young couples starting out today. I don't know how they do it. So I understand the need, but I'm in favor of the 3 stories. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other comments, Conseil Brisson, Conseil Lorrain?
Yeah, it was just to comment with whenever Conseiller Saucier was mentioning that it was not planned. It was already planned. It was just not the zoning that was changed. And as Councillor Lorrain mentioned, maybe it should be something that should be done whenever we do approve the subdivision agreement, that it's changed at that time, because it's right now it was just not changed, but it was already designed as a block that there was going to be apartment at that place. And if I see properly, you can correct me, Mrs. Tremblay, but it was an apartment that was supposed to be there, but it has to come to council to have it rezoned. So, and even for myself, I'm saying, do we have that possibility to limit to 3, but if the bearing capacity of the ground is able, I don't know if it's able to take 4 or 5, that would be the first thing. And I understand that the contractor need to know what his option is, because he doesn't want to spend a lot of money with the designer of a building to be told, oh, sorry, you cannot use that plan because it's too big. I understand that part. And that's why I'm saying maybe limiting to 3 might not be the good thing. Maybe a 4-story, maybe on 1 block, would be good if it meet the soil capacity, and he come back and say, okay, I don't have that limit, so I'm able to go up to that limit, and I can prove that it's okay, then we can approve it. But I understand that the contractor, he doesn't want to spend some money and to be said, sorry, you're not allowed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Conseiller Lorrain.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to clarify 2 quick things. I think Councillor Brisson mentioned that I suggested that this be done at subdivision agreement. That's not the case, because the subdivision agreement was done last fall. What my suggestion, I think what Councillor Taranowski said as well, was maybe they should be done at draft plan of subdivision. So when everything is on the table and we know what everything is, maybe that's the point, that everything gets zoned that way. And if there's any changes that the developer wants to make after that, when they come for subdivision agreement for each phase, then they bring it to the table at that point. But I don't know how that will work, but that's what I had said. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I know Madame Tremblay will jump in a second. The second piece that I wanted to correct, I think, was for Councillor Saucier, is that this area was designated multi-unit right from the beginning. Not so they were contemplated apartment buildings. Just the height at that time was 3-story maximum because of the township not having a ladder truck, and now they're up to 5 based on the official plan change of 2018 and the fact that we now have a ladder truck. So I just did want to correct a couple of things that were said. Unless I'm mistaken, Madame Tremblay, you can correct me. Thank you.
Thank you, Madame Tremblay.
Yeah, I just want to, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to mention that there's a lot of discussion of that we should have done it before, we should have waited at the last minute, or so when we receive a plan of subdivision, it's kind of easy. This one is a bit tricky because I don't know if you remember, but I was there when it started, and it's my first plan of subdivision back in 2005. So this subdivision has been going forever. It's been 16 years that we're talking about that plan of subdivision. Obviously, in 2010, we had no problem to densify at those locations because, like I've mentioned, the provincial policy statement is pretty clear on where we need to densify, where services are existing, to make sure that we are densifying where it makes sense and where it's cheaper for the township long term. So basically, those were we didn't have any issues that it was designated this way because we had that limit of 3-story. So for zoning, for example, we received all of plan of subdivision are zone R1AH, which is the single detached. But when we receive that plan of subdivision, the zoning amendments are a condition to the subdivision agreement because the market is changing so fast that they don't want to commit themselves to have just R1. So that's why they zone when they get to that phase. So calculate the phase, it started in 2005. This phase was just approved. Obviously, the market's changed since 2005. Those were blocks. Obviously, they can't be split, but it's the perfect example on Gamble Street. They were not designated for townhouse. We've done it last year or 2 years ago because the market is changing so fast that the developers are basically adapting and they're changing the zoning accordingly and making change to their plan of subdivision according to the market. So back then, single detached dwelling, that's what we were seeing all across the board, Embrun and Russell. We've seen changes in semis and then the future phases when you go in on boxcar, but then now it's because of the prices of houses and because of the market and because we are asked to densify and intensify, we're seeing more and more townhouses and we are seeing apartments, and it needs to be zoned accordingly based on the market. So yes, in the perfect world, we would zone everything and not changes, but the process of zoning amendment and red line changes for subdivision exists for a reason, because we need to adapt to the changes that we're seeing in the market.
Okay, thank you very much, Madame Tremblay. The only comment I'm going to add to this is the last attachment in the report, Madame Tremblay. This speaks to legal obligations accepted by the purchasers when they buy their house. If I understand properly, anybody buying a house, you know, I know there's that much stack of paperwork in it, but if I read this, it says that the zoning of existing development lands and potential development lands within the subdivision and within 2 kilometers of the limit of the subdivision. So if I read this and I understand correctly, the people who purchased homes in this area as part of their sale and purchase agreement and verified by their lawyer would have received this information, assuming that lawyers were doing their job, because it is a requirement from the township's perspective that this be supplied to the purchaser of the property, correct?
Yes, you're correct, Mr. Mayor. So I added the information because this is a comment that we've received as well in the public meeting, that people were not aware of this designation in the OP, since we're saying that it's been designated since 2010. And I've mentioned at the public meeting that I would bring back information to the council saying that the developer has the obligation in their model home to show the proposed subdivision and to show the zoning and to show the official plan designation as well. And yeah, so that's why I've included. So those are part of the subdivision agreement. Those are just subdivision agreement are registered on title of each house. And yes, there's obligation from the developer, and there's also obligation from the purchaser to do their homework to look at what's being proposed surrounding the property that they're purchasing.
Okay, thank you very much. Further questions, Councillor Saucier?
And was that done, Madame Tremblay? Were the homeowners, did the developer show them those obligations?
It would have been in, well, we can't speak for the developer, but when you buy a house and you get that much state of paperwork, if the lawyers were doing their jobs as per our agreement with the developers, those should have been in there. Is that correct, Madame Tremblay? So we can't verify that it was done because we're not going to see every sale contract between every home buyer and the developers in the area. But it should have been included in their packages based on our agreement, correct, Madame Tremblay?
Yes, you're correct. And as well, to be honest, we don't have staff time to go and check in every model home to make sure that they have the plan showing the homeowner that they want to purchase to see that the plan of subdivision is on the table. Maybe based on this experience, we will have to double check and make sure that the developer are aware of those conditions as well, that they inform the buyer of their obligation as well.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, Madame Tremblay, any purchaser who would have taken the time to contact the township to ask what was the future development in that area would have been provided this information?
Yes, you're correct, Mr. Mayor, because as mentioned earlier, the designation in the official plan has been since 2010. So unless they purchased before 2010, those property were shown as multi-unit residential.
Okay, thank you very much. Conseiller Larin?
Yeah, I fully agree that the developers should show full transparency to their complete build out, regardless of what phase that they are building in at that time. I'm not sure that everyone does do that, and if there's a way or mechanism in place or something that we can do going forward, I would like to see that come back to us to implement, because I definitely believe that if you have multiple phases within a development and you're not showing it, then you are not showing the proper transparency that is required, especially difficult in this type of a subdivision when you've got a multi-developer scenario where, you know, who has the obligation to show which plans. I know that, you know, in the Russell Trails, there's 2 developers in here right now. So in my opinion, both should be showing the entire build out, regardless of whether or not they're one or the other's units. Where it gets difficult is when you've got another development on the north that it is not part of this subdivision, never was. And I did correct myself with a member of the public last week, because I did originally think it was part of the original plan, but it wasn't. That subdivision, how do we enforce, or how do we get them to show the entire build out of all the development around them? Like it's hard to hold one person accountable to show another developer's subdivisions and their plans. So I understand the concern of not being told, but if one developer, it's not part of their development, it's difficult to force them to show another developer's subdivision plan, right? So unless there's a way we can do that, or if there's any type of suggestions from planning going forward, I think we should definitely be looking at that from a transparency perspective, so that everyone knows what's going on when they look to buy in our municipality. So I fully support anything that we can do to try and create that open and transparent process.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions at this point? Okay, we're voting on this separately, so I'm sure there'll be further discussion. Thank you very much, Madame Tremblay. We'll move on to the next item. Item J, authorization to execute a subdivision agreement, report PD 29-2021. That council receives report PD 29-2021 dated April 19, 2021, and approves the bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute and affix the corporate seal to a subdivision agreement between EMB Developments Inc. for phase 5 of the Domaine Versailles subdivision and the corporation of the Township of Russell for a parcel of land legally described as part of Lot 8, Concession 8. Questions, comments, members of council? Conseiller Brisson?
Just to make sure, that's just at the corner, at the back of the shop of La Pointe.
Oui, c'est ça sur off Centenaire, Madame Tremblay?
Non, pas Centenaire, c'est Saint-Thomas puis Notre-Dame. En arrière de Notre-Dame, je pense. Hein?
Oui.
C'est pour ça qu'il y a des fois que ça serait bon tout de bien avoir un petit peu plus grand pour qu'on puisse voir de quelle partie que ça fait, mais c'est juste m'assurer que c'est bien cette place-là.
Je pense que ça se connecte. Il va y avoir une connexion là, mais je pense que ça se connecte à Châteauguay puis Filion qui est off Centenaire.
C'est ça.
C'est ça. C'est ça, Madame Tremblay? Vas-y.
Oui, M. Maire, c'est bel et bien cette subdivision-là. Donc, c'est la finition de Domaine Versailles qui va connecter avec Saint-Thomas, donc l'extension de Châteauguay-Filion Centenaire. Je ne sais pas si on peut juste faire un lien avec le dossier d'avant, juste pour démontrer que le zonage de cette zone, de tout le plan de subdivision au complet est R1A. Le H a été enlevé une couple de mois passés, mais il y a un bloc qui est démontré à l'intersection de Saint-Thomas. Donc, les membres du conseil vont revoir une application qui va changer le zonage pour qu'on anticipe d'avoir du R3 encore parce que c'est un bloc. Donc, vous pouvez voir toutes les maisons qui sont des singles sont présentement entre 12 et 15 mètres de façade. Mais quand on présente des blocs comme celui-là dans le plan de subdivision, on peut s'attendre à ce qu'il y ait une demande de changement de zonage qui va s'en suivre pour permettre des appartements ou des maisons arrangées.
Okay. Merci beaucoup, Madame Tremblay. I think it's very important to realize that, you know, these are items that are requested out of the provincial policy statement, intensification, different types of density. I think it's just proper planning. I mean, realistically, we can't just have single homes, low density, because if we can have low density, but then don't expect, you know, high services and low taxes, you know, those three are intermingled and they have to work in conjunction together. So it's very difficult to have low density, low taxes and high services because, you know, we don't have the population base to do that. And we're not allowed to go higher than 5 stories like other municipalities. So thank you very much. If there's no further questions for that, we'll move on to the next item. Item 12, reports from investigator and the ombudsman. We have none. Item 13, notice motions. We have none. Item 14, question period on the meeting of the day. So let's start. Mr. Charles Armstrong, 85 Castlebow Street, item 11A. How many township employees were affected by the layoff? I don't have an exact number, but I believe that there was a lot of recreational daycare staff that had been laid off. Monsieur Leduc, Madame Guittard, any thoughts on that?
Yeah,
yes. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Yeah, so if I can say that in the last year, we've laid off over 60 part-time employees 3 times.
Okay, thank you very much, Madame Guittard. Next question, 269 Central Park is it's coming from Madame Shishi. It is the project apartments or condos? I believe we addressed that. A follow-up question, that's the same thing. 269 Central Park again. The Corvinelli brothers have proposed commercial spaces in those multi-units, so it changes the culture of the neighborhood because now all commercial spaces are on cast start and concession. Madame Tremblay, are these zoned for commercial units?
No, Mr. Mayor, they're only residential units.
Right. So if ever he wanted to put commercial in that zoning, he'd have to ask, and I don't understand why he would, but there's no, as far as I know, I've never heard of commercial units going in these buildings. That would have to come back to council. He'd have to make an amendment to that one, correct?
Correct, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Let's see here. That's a comment. That's a comment. Mr. Bruce Smith, 188 Sunset Crescent. Is it possible to consider moving the blocks closer towards ED Road that would meet provincial requirements, alleviate many of the concerns of existing homeowners and residents. Madame Tremblay.
Unfortunately, I don't think it's possible in the sense that we have the park. So unless the developer would proceed with a red line change or a new plan of subdivision, because it's been approved and it's been registered on title with the sizes of the houses, I don't think it's an option at this point.
Okay, thank you. Again, Mr. Bruce Smith, 188 Sunset Crescent. A big part of the concern is the lack of transparency from developers. The Corvinelli website still doesn't identify these blocks as being planned for apartments. Why did council not ensure that Corvinelli was forthcoming about these units? The link below still doesn't identify them, and he processes a link. Again, that's something to look at in regards from our operational standpoint, Madame Tremblay, how we can, you know, again, what's being shared with the public. Comment on that?
Yeah, I just want to confirm that we did have that conversation with Mr. Corvinelli, and he showed me the plan that is in the model home when he's selling houses, and those blocks are identified as being multi-residential blocks. Therefore, they're not split the same way as we could see singles or everything else like this. So basically, when it shows a block, it's under the understanding that it will be apartments or something else than singles or semis. So it was identified on the plan that he showed me. So unless Mr. Smith saw another plan, Mr. Corvinelli shared that plan with me, and it basically shows this as a block and multi-residential units.
Okay, well, the link is there, so we can have a look at that. 269 Central Park, Paul, he's asking, shouldn't you make the change so that developers share their plans so it's more transparent to potential buyers? Again, we just had that conversation, but again, I want to point out that technically when you purchase your home within 2 kilometers, your lawyer should have made sure that that information was part of the package when purchasing the home. Mr. Smith, in regards to on Sunset Crescent, regarding Councillor Brisson's comment, is the risk of rejection not part of the cost of doing business for developers? We can't be approving things we don't fully understand just because we're worried about the pocketbook of the developer. Is this not part of his business risk? Well, that would be a discussion for to speak with the developer. That's a question for the developer. Sam Doyle, 536 Lucent Street. I'm new to Russell. Does Russell have any plans to add stoplights to the fitness trail and where the 3-way stop is? I'm just thinking with now another zoning change on block 121 to R3, does the traffic study include the new change for another 3-story complex? Thank you very much for your question, Mr. Doyle. Correct me if I'm wrong, Monsieur Bourgon, I believe the fitness trail, that's one of the sections that we are adding a pedestrian crossing light. We have 4 or 5 of them that were approved at last council meeting through our along the fitness trail. Monsieur Bourgon?
Monsieur Sama, so yes, that's correct. So now all our trail crossing throughout the township will have those pedestrian crossing by the end of the summer.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see, this was from Paul again, 269 Central Park. I spoke to Melanie developer and he is not aware that a multi-use unit was to be built by another developer. So was this not presented on time when we signed the deed? So is there any transparency? We've heard your comments loud and clear. Obviously, there's some discussions internally on how we can try and make sure that the plans are being better shared with residents when they're purchasing properties. Let's see, Mr. Smith, how can we say residents have been properly consulted when we haven't been able to leave our homes to properly organize and make our concerns heard? Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. You've made your concerns here this evening. You've also made comments at the planning meeting. So I think there's been multiple opportunities. You've sent emails. You've had conversations with members of council. So I think that, you know, that is the process. So thank you very much, everyone. I think that addressed the questions. I will now move on to the next item, which is item 15, resolutions. Resolution A, donation to the OPP Emblem Detachment for fitness equipment upgrade. Whereas the mayor received a donation request letter from the OPP Emblem Detachment on March 29, 2021 in regards to fitness equipment upgrade for the OPP fitness room located at the Emblem Detachment. And whereas the donation would be beneficial for the health and well-being of the members. And whereas this project will reinforce that members of the OPP Emblem Detachment are supported in developing the resiliency and capabilities necessary to mitigate the psychological and physical demands of their work. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Council approves a donation to the OPP Detachment from the discretionary account of Pierre Leroux, Cindy Saucier, Mike Ternowski, and Jamie Lorrain in the amount of $150 each for a total of $600. I need a mover and a seconder to put on the table, please. Moved by Councillor Tarnowski, seconded by Councillor Saucier. Questions, comments? Seeing none.
Just a question I have.
Wait, Conseil Brisson, go ahead.
I know that I'm still not in favor of doing this, so that's why I'm still keeping the resolution like this. But my question is, if there's a demand that is coming, like for an example, from Limoges, can I use my like $150 to help them for the Kiwanis Park?
Thank you, Conseil Brisson. If there's a request that comes, then you can bring it to the table of council, and council can have that discussion and decide as a group whether we want to give that donation or not. That's why we have this discussion.
Just to bring it and then decide. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions or comments on this issue? Councillor Saucier?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, especially what you've put in there, the psychological and physical demands of their work, and, you know, appreciate the work that they do. And I think it helps make a healthy community, healthy police force. So I think it's all good. Thank you.
Thank you. Without any further ado, I'll call for the vote, please.
Mike Ternowski, yes.
André, oui.
Jamie, yes.
Cindy Saucier, yes.
Thank you very much. That is carried. We'll now move on to item B, which is resolutions under item 11. Motion that council approves all recommendations listed under agenda number 11, reports from departments and council committees. We'll put it on the table, and there's a few we have to remove, so I need a mover and a seconder to put it on the table. Moved by Councillor Ternowski, seconded by Conseiller Brisson. I believe it was E, H, and I, Madame Laflamme?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So I need a mover and a seconder to remove those three items. Moved by Conseiller Lorrain, seconded by Councillor Ternowski. All those in favor of removing those three items?
Mike Ternowski, oui.
André, oui.
Jamie, yes.
Cindy Saucier, yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So we'll vote on everything except E, H, and I. Call for the vote.
Mike Ternowski, oui.
André, oui.
Jamie, yes.
Cindy Saucier, yes.
Perfect. The rest of the items are carried. Now we will go back to item E, the one-time doubling of federal gas tax report FS 11 2021. I need a mover and a seconder to put on table. Moved by Councillor Ternowski, seconded by Conseiller Brisson. I'll speak to this one. I'll ask if anybody wants to move and second my suggestion that we hold back an amount of $100,000 and give direction to the administration to come back with a traffic calming plan for the municipality, and they can address certain roads. They'll know which ones we're getting a lot of complaints on. I know Central Park is a large one. I know that part of Saint-Nod is another one. I believe there's some areas, some collector roads, Saint-Augustin, and so forth. So I'm looking to see if there's if somebody would move and second that one. Moved by Councillor Ternowski, seconded by Councillor Saucier. So so I guess the wording could be as well as towards the financing of the capital project C03 40 21 004 small Saint Joseph Bridge, and that we allocate $100,000 to traffic calming measures following a report from the administration. Would that be acceptable, Monsieur Leduc? Yeah, okay, perfect. So questions on that? Conseiller Lorrain?
Yeah, so at the time that report comes back, can we then include a reserve if there's any funds left available? Because I don't want to just say we're going to, whatever we implement, and then the rest of the money goes back.
No, I think that'll be part of the report. Right now, what we're doing is we're putting $100,000 aside. If the administration comes back and says it's only 50,000, then we'll have a discussion for the remaining 50,000. But yeah, that'll be part of the report, I believe.
Okay, then I'm okay with that then. Thank you.
Okay, so Monsieur Leduc?
Mr. Mayor, do you have any idea as far as Mr. Bourgon, so the timelines or deadlines that you may want to have this report produced for decision making?
All right, thank you, Monsieur Bourgon. I'll ask Monsieur Bourgon if he has an idea of a realistic timeline for the report. That is, I don't necessarily want to see the works completed in the next 2 weeks, but when do you think you could have a report ready for council on this subject?
To have a complete report, it would be, we could try to aim the first meeting of June.
Okay.
And again, depending of what the recommendation could be, there may be some work proposed that won't be able to be completed this year.
Okay. All right. Well, I think, okay, so let's aim for June, and if Monsieur Bourgon is able to have it for May, great. If not, then we realize that, at least we're moving forward with this file to try and make improvements in these concern areas. So I'm okay with that. Any other comments? No, hearing none. I'll call for the vote.
Mike Ternovsky, yes.
André, oui.
Jamie, yes.
Cindy Sosa, yes.
Thank you. So that was the vote on the amendment. So I'll call on the vote. If there's no further questions, I'll call on it as amended.
Mike Ternovsky, oui.
André, oui.
Jamie, yes.
Cindy Sosa, yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much, members of council. The next item separated was the LED lights exemption, Emblem Report PR 03 2021. That council receives report PR 03 2021 dated April 19, 2021, and grants an exemption to the purchasing policy to award the project to André Clement Electric Inc. Need a mover and a seconder to put it on the table. So moved by Conseiller Brisson, seconded by Councillor Ternovsky. Questions, comments? Conseiller Lorrain?
Yeah, I'm torn on this one, but I think I have to stick with what I normally do, and unfortunately I don't think I can vote in favor of this. I guess I would like, hope that we had more options there, but right now I just unfortunately can't support the exemption request.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Okay, in that case, I'll call for the yes vote.
Okay. André, oui.
Mike?
So I called for the yes vote. So if you're in favor, just say yes.
Because Mike and Jimmy are no. That's why it's your turn.
Okay, sorry. I'll say yes.
Okay, I'll call for the no vote.
Oh, Mike Ternovsky, no.
Jamie, no.
So it leaves me to be the tie-breaking decision on this one. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to vote no on this one. So we will go to bids and tender on this one. And hopefully it comes back positive. Thank you very much. Next item, zoning bylaw amendment report PD 2020-2021, vacant lots located on future Gamble Drive in Russell in the Russell Trail subdivision. The council receives report PD 2020-21 dated April 19, 2021, and approves the zoning bylaw amendment 2018-094 for blocks 97, 98, and 99 on Plan 50R353 from Residential 1 R1A to Residential 3 Exception 51 R353 to permit construction of apartment buildings and to limit the maximum permitted height on the subject property to 12 meters and not more than 3 stories. Need a mover and a seconder to put it on the table, please. Moved by Councillor Tarnowski, seconded by Conseiller Brisson. Questions, comments? Conseiller Tarnowski and then Conseiller Lorrain.
I'd like to propose an amendment, and so I would propose to defer the zoning bylaw amendment decision until plans for the proposed building be submitted to be reviewed against compatibility criteria.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Tarnowski. We have that motion is moved. Do we have a seconder?
I will second that.
Okay, Councillor Saucier, questions? Conseiller Lorrain?
Yep, I just like to know, and I'm sure that the proponents would like to know, what size buildings are they submitting plans for? A 3-story, a 4-story, or a 5-story? Because we don't know, the zoning is R3, right? That's what the request is. That's what's in the subdivision agreement that's already been signed. That's what's in the OP. So I think it's hard for us to push for plans of like a site plan and the actual plans of a building that the proponent won't even know what size to submit. So I find it hard for them to be able, for me to say, well, come back with plans. Well, what plans are we asking them to go spend money on? You know, there is a cost to this, I understand, but we can't ask the developer to go spend tens of thousands of dollars on 3 different plans just because we don't know what size that we're gonna put through. So that's where I have a concern with this request, is what are we asking the developer to actually do?
Okay, thank you very much, Conseiller Lorrain. Councillor Saucier, you'd like to respond to that?
Yeah, because are we not still waiting on the soil test anyway for this project? I'm totally in favor of just 3 stories, no higher. So that's you know, I still, like Councillor Tarnowski said, I just feel like I find it hard to vote on something when there's so many questions still.
I think the reality is the soil test could come back and say you can do 5 stories. So what we're saying is, if, like, you know, as Councillor Lorrain pointed out, are we sending them to do plans for a 3-story, a 4-story, or a 5-story?
3.
So if that's the case, I guess my question would be, that's the recommendation of Madame Tremblay. So why would we be deferring this if that's the direction you want to go with, is the 3-story being recommended by staff? Madame Tremblay, anything to add to that?
The normal process is that we have at least, so I just don't want to sound like it's a done deal here, but the medium density doesn't allow you to go any other zone than R3. So basically the R3 is what they need to design on. As I mentioned earlier, the R3 allows for 3-story. However, it needs to be back to 2 meter and then go up to 4 and 5-story. So the reason of saying they don't want to design, they don't have to fully design. The normal process is when we do a zoning amendment on a vacant property, we ask that we see the same as when we sell a property in the 417 Industrial Park. We ask them for elevation of a type of building that they would be looking for. So it's not hard to do a footprint of a building, show where parking is. They'll have to do it no matter what. The elevation is not something that must be exactly what they need to do. Like, we've seen emails that they were proposing what it could look like, and this is satisfactory for the Township of Russell, for the planning department at least to know exactly, or at least have an idea of what's going to be proposed. The soil test, to be honest, if it was me, I would do that right away. I know that they've been conducting those soil studies, but it may say, based on the condition of the soil that we have in Russell, that they can go 5-story. So I agree that it's premature not having the result of that site, that soil study to determine if we're fighting for the 3, 4, or 5 story, because it could not be a fight if we know exactly what the soil capacity are. Based on the neighboring property, it's not really a soil that would allow to have a 5 story. So if it's to defer until we know exactly what would be the height, then it's a reason as well. But as I mentioned, they don't have to have the full design of the plans to know exactly where they're aiming, because the R3 setbacks are the same for a 5 or a 3 story building. The parking requirements are the same. Everything is the same. They could just show elevation of similar building of what they'd be looking at for a building. They've done that in the last couple of days, and it's not something that would cost a lot of money.
Okay, thank you very much, Madame Tremblay. In regards to the provincial policy statement, when somebody submits a plan or somebody submits a request, is there a time frame that we have to respect?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, so we have the responsibility that we should and shall make a decision on the zoning application on 120 days based on the day that the application was submitted. If not, if no decision is taken, then the proponent has the obligation, they could appeal to LPAC.
Okay, so if we make the decision to defer, do we have to, do they have to submit something to us inside that 120 days? Or they can just let it ride and say at 120 days, we didn't follow the provincial policy statement?
Yeah, so technically, if no decision is made, they have the obviously, if it goes to LPAC, we have something that shows that we've worked on the file. So it's not like we didn't want to make a decision, we've asked them. So there's a way to get out of that 120 days obligation, but I would strongly suggest that we make a decision prior to that. But like I said, we're not asking full built out design elevation plan. We're just asking a bit of cooperation to show where the building will be placed on the site, where parking will be located, and the facade where it's going to be, so we could have a better idea, for example, on setbacks that would be applicable and how much units they could fit based on the parking. Based on the soil test, are they going to do the parking underground? I'm not quite sure that the soil will be able to take that. So making sure that they have enough room based on the number of units as proposed, based on the number of parking space that is required as well.
Okay, so from that standpoint, we can defend ourselves at LPAT in regards to deferring this, because all we're saying is give us some more information to work with, so you can give us, so you can make it easier on us to make an informed decision. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure I was understanding the process properly. Further questions, Conseiller Brisson? And
also to know if they would accept, like with the site plan, if they would accept like the recommendation of Conseiller Lorrain of a 3-story for the first 2 blocks and a 4-story if soil capacity permit for the farther on, so to know what we can vote on it too. Okay, Madame Tremblay.
So I can confirm that that we had those discussions obviously with the developer, and I don't know if Mr. Lorrain wants to respond to that question, but there was discussion that we would not limit the height on the last block, which is the further east, and have a limitation, and they were comfortable with that as well.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments, Conseiller Lorrain?
Yeah, I'll just speak to that point, because I think what the discussion that I had late this afternoon with the developer was that they would agree, although they weren't happy with it, they would agree to the 4-story on 99, which is the furthest west towards Edie Road, and agree to the 3-story on 97 and 98. So at least we're controlling the height in that circumstance. And again, if under the site plan, when that comes in and the soil samples come in, and if they can't build that high, then they won't, based on the soil testing, right? They have to do all that stuff to get it pushed through anyway. Right now, we're just dealing with the zoning, the R3 zone, and the limitations on it. So we're controlling the limits within the main road, and we would be controlling the limits on the far side as well by coming down. So there would not be a 5-story, regardless of the soil sample. They wouldn't be able to put a 5-story up. So they've agreed that if we were to go 4 there and 3 on the other 2, that they would be acceptable to that. So that's what I was going to propose. But we're into a different amendment right now, and that's to defer. And again, I don't know where we go with that, so I'll let council decide.
Thank you very much, Conseiller Lorrain. I appreciate the comments. I appreciate you having a conversation with them. Again, a verbal agreement, I think, is not, it doesn't carry much weight. It's realistically, it's what council votes on that will decide ultimately what they're able to do and whether they want to take us to LPAT or not. But Madame Tremblay.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure as well that the fact that we're limiting to 3-story, and I get Mr. Lorrain's point that most of the parking size and everything else and the layout will be regulated by site plan. But the one point I wanted to make is that we still have the responsibility as the per zoning amendment to make sure that the criteria of compatibility under our official plan are looked at as part of the official plan and the zoning bylaw amendment, which is right now. One of the reasons is that when we get to the site plan application, there's no appeal process for public, the member of the public. So the only person that are entitled to appeal the site plan are the proponent, which is the developer. So the only opportunity for the public right now to appeal on zoning perspective based on compatibility and height and everything else like this that we're considering as part of the zoning, because it will be permitted if we zone it, is at the time of the zoning bylaw amendment.
Okay, thank you. Conseiller Lorrain?
The only thing I would add to that is, unless a request is made either by the planning committee or council to have the site plan be brought to either that table or this table. So that is also an option.
However, Mr. Mayor, if I could just make sure that we're on the same page, there's no right to appeal from the public, even if it's done, the site plan is brought back in front of council.
Okay. I think it's an important discussion to have. I think that, when we talk about LPAT and going to the tribunal, there's risks from all parties. There's risk from the resident side, from the township side, and from the developer side. I can think of 1 or 2 examples in the history of the township where the township tried to work with the developer, limiting something, and the residents were up against arms, took it to LPAT, and the developer said, fine, then, I'll go back to my original plan. And never mind, my compromises, I'll go. So, there's also that risk where if the soil was able to take, 5-story buildings and we end up going to the LPAT, the developer would have an argument to come back and say, you know what, never mind everything. I'm putting 3 5-story buildings. That's it. That's all. So I think it's a balancing act. We have to realize the pros and cons of our decisions here. So we do have an amendment on the table to defer this. We have a mover and a seconder. So if that's the case, if there's no further questions or comments, then I'll call for the vote. Councillor Tarnowski, you wanted to make a last comment?
Yeah, just to ask for a recorded vote, please.
Okay. So I'll call for a recorded vote.
Okay, Mike Tarnowski in favor of the the proposition as amended.
André, oui.
Oh, hold on. I just want to confirm, we're voting on the amendment, not on the proposition as amended.
That's right. We're voting on the amendment to defer.
Okay. I just wanted to clear it up based on what the way Councillor Tarnowski made his comment.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you. Sorry. I missed Councillor Brisson's comment.
I just said yes.
Oh.
Okay.
Jamie, no.
Cindy Sosa, yes.
I'll vote no. So, but it is carried, and it is the item is deferred. The amendment is deferred. So I don't know if there's further question on this item or not, Madame Camille Laflamme, can you just confirm, since the amendment was to defer, does that, once that has been approved, then the conversation is fini?
Mr. Mayor, yes, because then, well, we can put that it was received the report and was deferred exactly as
okay, but
as it was proposed.
It's essentially that it's been deferred.
That's
so.
it. And then we can just put in the bylaws to refer to 11I for the resolution that it was deferred.
Okay, parfait. Merci beaucoup. Okay, so that is deferred. So we'll move on to the, that was the last item in regards to the resolutions.
Good question.
Questions? Conseiller Ternowski, I see a hand up by Conseiller Lorrain as well.
Yeah, so just quickly, when we voted to defer, we voted to defer the decision until plans of the proposed building be submitted and be reviewed against compatibility criteria, correct?
Yeah, as the option,
sure. Yeah,
as
okay.
the option listed in the agenda.
Thank you.
Councillor Lorrain, no, you're good? Okay, perfect. So thank you very much. So now we move on to item 16, bylaws and attachment. Motion that council approves bylaws 2021-040 to 2021-041 inclusively for first, second, and third reading as listed on the agenda. So in regards to 2021-40, we'll make a note that that was deferred. And then we'll vote on, I guess we'll just be voting on 2021-41 for the bylaw to, for the phase 5 of Domaine Versailles. So I need a mover and a seconder for that one. Moved by Councillor Ternowski, second by Conseiller Brisson. Call for the vote.
Mike Ternowski, yes.
André, oui.
Jamie, yes.
Cindy Sosa, yes.
Perfect, merci beaucoup. Prochain item 17, qui est les rapports d'affaires nouveaux, il n'y en a pas. Item 18, rapport d'hiver, 18 council member items. So item 18A, myself for tree on Legion Lane. This was just to bring it to the attention of council. I know that there was emails from Councillor Saucier. There's a tree on Legion Lane that's being cut down by hydro. So there was email exchanges between Councillor Saucier and staff, and then I was copied in, so I got involved. So Monsieur Bourgon, can you just confirm for us that this tree is being cut down by hydro? I believe that there's been 2 different arborists who have looked at the tree and determined that it is a safety concern.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. So hydro will be cutting down some branches because they're getting too close of the hydro line. While doing so, they find out that there's that after cutting those branches, the remaining of the tree, which there's a portion in bad condition right now, will create a hazard down the line. So with exchange with staff, offered to cut down the tree while they are there. So there's some cost saving for the township at that point, and municipal staff only had to remove the wood along the road. But really hydro, and we did get a second opinion that pretty much conclude the same, had the same conclusion of hydro, the hybris of hydro. So at this point, hydro really are coming in only to cut branches.
Okay, and the risk is that if the tree is not cut, they'll be top heavy on one side, and there's a potential of it falling down. Correct?
Exactly. It's already there's already a crack in the split of those branches, and now so there's increasing of that risk to that tree.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Saucier.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, so like I spoke to hydro, and I just got a totally different story. So they had told me the tree wasn't a hazard for the wires. The tree was perfectly healthy, was in full bud, and that he said, you know, he felt it could be saved. And so that's why I was confused, because you know, this was from Dave Castleman of Hydro, and he said just the opposite to me, and that the tree was worth saving. He didn't want to cut it. So that's why I, you know, was sending out the email, because I had a letter from an email from a resident nearby where the tree is on his property, and he wanted the tree saved. So I, you know, looking at it, I don't see anything on the trunk or anything, and there's nothing been cut yet. So I don't know how this was determined when there's been no work done on the tree at all. So that's why I was confused.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Saucier. While I appreciate your passion for this, let's keep in mind that there's a political side to this organization and there's an operational side, and we shouldn't be crossing into the operations side. Monsieur Bourgon, you're the executive director of that department. You have relationships with Hydro. You know, and to my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, Monsieur Bourgon, Hydro doesn't even have to inform us when they're making these decisions, right? It's because we have a good relationship with us that they're informing us?
Yes, Mr. Masso, that's correct. So Hydro can proceed by cutting down trees or cutting down branches without informing us. They've been doing so in the last several years. We do entertain a good relationship with Hydro One. So that's there's a good exchange, there's a good communication between both parties.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think it's important that we keep in mind that, you know, when residents come to us and we have concerns, of course, our job is to pass that along to the administration and let them do their job and do their investigation. But I mean, taking it further than that, I don't think is our role. Councillor Saucier?
Yeah, I don't agree, because like I said, a resident asked me to look into it. So, and he was very reasonable to speak to. You know, he said, I'm waiting to hear from Township and your direction, but he said, you know, his professional opinion was that the tree could be saved. So everything in our plan, our OP, our bylaw, everything, we're supposed to be preserving these heritage trees in our village. And I don't see that happening. So yes, I did, you know, I sit on the Environment Committee, and I do have a concern about the trees in our village core. And, you know, I'll continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll remind you to, I'll suggest that you reread the Staff Council Code of Conduct. There is specifically a section in there that says will not interfere personally on behalf of residents in the management and operation of departments. So our job is to bring resident concerns to the administration. And if you're not happy with the administration on how they're dealing with the matter, then you can speak with the CAO and you can bring it to the table of council. But it's not our place to start having discussions directly with other organizations. Conseiller Lorrain? No? Okay. Thank you very much. The next item, Councillor Saucier, Earth Day and Earth Week.
How ironic. Yes, so this is Earth Week, and Earth Day is on Thursday, April 22nd. And this began in 1970, and the theme this year is Together We Can Restore Our Earth. The Environment Advisory Committee had adopted something on our website, on the township website, and we were encouraging residents to not to go out as a group, but as a family, and maybe adopt part of the trail or do a cleanup. I know there may be some COVID restrictions now because the parks are closed, because we had initially said to possibly clean up parks. But anyway, they can still go out for a walk, and if they see litter, pick it up. And it also suggests that they take a photo and send it into the township, and that there was actually a contest and they could win a prize. So that's on our website, so I encourage residents to check it out. And it's on the Facebook page as well, the township Facebook page. I just also want to acknowledge Foodland. because in May they will be eliminating all plastic bags. So it's a good endeavor to celebrate Earth Week. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Councillor Associate. They're eliminating it permanently or just for Earth Week?
Permanently.
Very nice to hear. Thank you very much. Questions, comments on that? Conseil Brisson?
What date again you mentioned? Is it the 22nd, 23rd?
April 22nd is Earth Day. And
Okay.
yeah, it's also my husband's birthday, so that's why I married him. But,
And Earth Week?
On Earth Day. But yes, April 22nd is Earth Day, but this whole week is titled Earth Week.
Okay.
The other question I have is for Jonathan Bourgon. I know that there's like my road, Saint Pierre, was picked up by the staff of the municipality for the garbage. Was there some other places? And if there is, are we able to just pick up and leaving like the bag there, or what's the process of it?
Thank you very much. Monsieur Bourgon.
Merci, Monsieur le maire. Donc oui, nos équipes ont procédé au cours des dernières semaines à ramasser les déchets le long de nos chemins. Mais on a aussi des résidents qui nous ont avisés qui ont fait de même dans certaines rues. Donc, on invite ces gens-là qui ont fait cette activité-là de nous contacter à notre bureau d'infrastructure pour qu'on puisse arranger là, quelque chose pour ramasser les sacs de déchets.
Parfait. Merci beaucoup.
Est-ce qu'on pourrait avoir la liste des chemins qui restent à faire, si on veut en faire?
Je peux demander à mon équipe là, de mettre ensemble là, cette information-là.
OK, merci.
Merci. Other questions, comments on this one? No, we'll move on to the next item. Item C, Councillor Tarnowski, communications.
Thank you very much. This is just trying to get some clarification. So we have a few posts that went out today in regards to closures for parts of our area. So I think the Russell Skate Park was one that was listed there for some renovations, which is great news. And then the other one was part of the trail that was closed for some work being done. I just wanted to ask for some additional clarity when we post those kind of communications. We are in a very confusing time with all the various lockdowns and the change of orders and everything else. And so when we see closed on these announcements, just saying closed, and I know we can read down below for additional information, but perhaps we should differentiate if they are closed because of the pandemic or closed for renos or something like that. Because a closed for reno is a great piece of news. Closed for pandemic is a whole different story. So when you first see them, it's frustrating to see, and if you're just scrolling through social media, you may not read it. So I think it'd be a good idea to, rather than just say fermé closed and then just like put it as part of the signage. It's just a comment. And I just wanted clarification. Is the skate park considered a I think right now we're allowed to have for some of these to be open or not. So I just wanted clarification around that, please.
Thank you very much. Madame Guittard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. No, it's not. So it will still be closed, unfortunately.
Okay, so posting something saying that it's closed for renovations doesn't make sense.
Well, it is closed for renovation.
Yeah, I know.
Because we are renovating, and it was open before. The play structures in the parks had not been opened yet after the winter season, because we were just finalizing the annual inspections that we have to do under CSA. So that's why.
So perhaps an option is when it's closed for maintenance and that kind of stuff, say temporarily closed, and then the people have a tendency to ask, why is it temporarily closed? But it is frustrating with COVID right now, all the what's open, what's not, understand the need for clearer communication, if you will.
Yeah, just if I may, one more point, just where you say fermé closed or closed fermé, just to say for like COVID related or not, you know, that would just be my request. Thank you.
Thank you. Conseiller Laurent?
Yeah, can I just clarify something there? And just so I understand, in case I get asked about it, because my kids are around that age that would probably use the skate park. Is that a municipal decision on a skate park? Or is that provincial skate park across the board because I don't see a big difference between a skate park and a play structure area or a playground. I mean, that's just an older demographic.
Yeah,
normally.
I think that is, I agree with you. There is not much of a difference, but that's how the provincial wording was read, that play structures are open, but specifically they close the skate parks. Is that correct, Madame Guittard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. That's exactly right. And if you remember, on Friday night, we had to close the play structures, everything, all amenities in the parks. And then Saturday morning, Premier Ford came back and said we could reopen just the play structures. But the picnic tables are still closed, the skate parks, the tennis courts, basketball courts, that's all still closed.
Yeah, I think I can't assume to speak for the government, but my feeling would be that play structures for younger kids means that parents are there to make sure there's social distancing. When you get into older activities for teenagers where the parents aren't necessarily around, the province is probably a little bit more worried that they won't adhere to proper guidelines. That would be my thought on it, but yes, it's very frustrating. Okay, thank you very much. Move on to the next item. Myself for second garbage bags. So I've got asked by a few residents last year when we were under a stay-at-home order, we allowed for a second bag of garbage. Obviously, we did so because, you know, people that would normally be bringing their garbage, you know, to the workplace and dumping it there, now they're stuck doing it at home. We're in another stay-at-home order, so I was asked, why haven't we put that in effect at this point in time? I know that we're in lockdown for another month. I told the resident I would bring it to the table for discussion. Do we want to entertain that discussion? And maybe Monsieur Bourgon could remind me what the cost of was for a second garbage bag. Conseil Laurent, you have a question?
Well, I would support that if that came out for a period of time. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in one of our first reports tonight, we talked about some COVID funding that we had, and wouldn't this funding be able to be used towards the additional bag if we put it through as part of that program? So if we said it's $5,000 for an extra bag for the month, then I would suggest that we take the money from that COVID reserve. So that would be my suggestion anyway.
Okay, Monsieur Bourgon, can you confirm what the costs were? I just want to make sure we know the full cost before.
I was actually trying to find that info quickly. In top of my head, I have $750 weekly.
Yeah.
Being the extra charge by Waste Management to pick up the second bag.
Okay. I think that's reasonable. I think it's funny, right? Because we're encouraging people to go clean our ditches and stuff and put the garbage at the road, and we'll pick it up for free. You know, we're getting free labor out of them to do that. But then when, you know, because they have a little bit of extra garbage at home because they're staying at home, you know, we're saying right now, go spend the money. So I think it's a good compromise, especially this week, since we're asking for everybody to clean up. Councillor Tarnowski and Conseil Laurent.
So I think it's a good idea, Mr. Mayor. I think it's too bad. Like, one of the biggest challenges we face, just using myself as an example, is the recycling has grown exponentially while everyone's in the house, and now we're limited. We can't use bags, and I know we don't have a choice there, but I'm finding halfway through the 1 week I'm full, and that would be more of a challenge for me than the garbage itself, because the garbage I mean I could bring it to the dump. But the recycling I can't unless I bring it to the dump, which I don't want to do.
Right. Okay. Councillor Laurent and then Councillor Saucier.
Well, my only comment was I wanted to make sure that the understanding from my point of view would be that we're not discouraging recycling. We are still encouraging recycling, but we understand that there's going to be additional garbage that is put forth and has to go into the garbage. So that's the reason why I would be supporting an additional bag a week for a period of 6 weeks or whatever that time frame is, or until whatever time frame is suggested. And to Councillor Tarnowski's point, I don't know if there's something we do with providing an additional recycle bin to whoever wants to come and get one, what that cost would be, I don't know. But if they want to do that, I know I use other bins that I have laying around. I have other big totes and I throw those out because, like you said, I've got 3 recycle bins and they're full, and I've got 2 more just, big totes that we would use for storage, and I use those and I bring them to the road, and that way there I can maximize my recycling at that point. I'm not limiting to the 3 bins of recycling that I have, the blue bins. So that's how I get around that. I don't know if I'm supposed to or not, but I mean, they've been taking it, and at least we're still recycling.
Okay, just for clarification, I'm suggesting it's just while the stay-at-home order is in place. I believe it's in place till May 20th now, so we're talking about 4 weeks. If ever they extended it, then that could be brought back up to do we want to continue. But like I said, this is a resident or a few residents who have asked this question, so I thought I'd bring it up tonight. Councillor Saucier?
Well, that was my question, was how long, and I would hope that it would come across to the Environmental Advisory Committee as well. But if it's just to May 20th, then that's not an issue because we don't meet again before that. So we have had this discussion at the Environment Committee table, and again, I think one thing that's happening when people are talking about so much recycling is people are just buying every single day from Amazon. So you see boxes and boxes and boxes for recycling, but we do have bins for sale for $7 for extra bins. And like Councillor Laurent said, they can put out another container or a cardboard box with all their extra cardboard in. And it is accepted by the contractor. So, yeah.
Thank you. Like I said, I don't think it's an issue right now in regards to recycling. It's just in regards to garbage because people are staying home more. So, Monsieur Le Duc, do you need a resolution from council for this one? The costs are we can give you a direction. I think everybody's on board to give you the direction, but.
I think the direction to offer a second collection until stay-at-home order is in place. I think if that's a direction voted by council, I think it's fine. And if it's extended, then it would apply for an extension.
Okay, so I'll just so we all know what we're talking about. Second bag till the end of the stay-at-home order. Hopefully, it doesn't extend past 4 weeks. And if somebody has an issue that it's going past 4 weeks, we can bring that to the table. But Councillor Laurent?
Starting what day? Just so that people that are watching may think that that's immediately, but we have to obviously contact the company and let them know. So I guess we need to ask Mr. Bourgon, when is it realistic to start?
Okay, Monsieur Bourgon?
Merci. So I was going to ask that clarification. So to your point, Mr. Laurent, yes, I'll need time to advise the company. So at the sooner it would be so starting next Monday, but that leaves us really short notice to advise a resident as well.
Just for clarification, Monsieur Bourgon, if I remember well, last year when we were in the same situation, the amount of residents who were actually taking advantage of that second bag was not enormous, was it?
No, I don't remember exactly the amount, but you're right. It was a minimal amount, and I'm pretty sure the fee was reasonable from what Waste Management charged us per week for that extra work.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, it's not unrealistic that a lot of people probably been doing it, have just been putting the sticker on it. So I don't anticipate a huge increase, but Monsieur Bourgon will let Monsieur Bourgon speak with the company, and obviously as soon as we can get a go-ahead from them, then we'll announce it on our social media pages and through our newsletter. Is that acceptable, Monsieur Bourgon?
Yeah, that works for us.
Okay. So I guess I'll ask for a mover and a seconder, just make sure we're doing this all good. So Councillor Lorrain and Councillor Ternosky, everyone in favor?
Mike Ternosky, yes.
André, oui.
Jamie, yes.
Cindy say no.
And myself, yes. So it's not a resolution per se, it's just a direction, but we have enough to give that direction as council. So thank you very much, everyone. Item 18E, Councillor Brisson, blood bank, blood clinic.
Yeah, just a reminder to everybody that this week, April 21st, Wednesday, there will be a blood clinic in Embrun from 2 to 6. So if somebody wants to give, they just have to contact at 1-800 to donate to see if there's still room, because it's only by appointment. And all the precaution, they assure us that will be taken to with COVID, but it's going on. So, and I will be giving my donation as usual. So I invite everybody, because a donation can save a few lives.
Yeah, thank you very much, Conseil Brisson. And we know during these COVID times that there are shortages in our in the blood supply, so it's definitely something worth doing. Councillor Saucier?
Yeah, I was just actually kind of confused that it was still going on, because I'm a regular donor and I got no notification. I did have an appointment booked, and with a stay-at-home order, I'm just wondering, like, would they want people? I mean, you'd have to line up and wait to go in. I'm just a little confused. Like, they canceled it last time when it was a stay-at-home order.
It was only the first time that they canceled it, because they weren't prepared to how to set it in the room. But now they consider it an essential service.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Ternosky?
Yeah, just clarify, it's 188 to donate, not 1-800. 188
okay,
to donate, and they are, just confirming, Cindy, they are taking appointments. I just made mine.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mike.
Awesome. Okay, that's it for council member items. On va aller au prochain item, consultation publique. Il n'y a pas. Closed session. Motion to move into closed session at the hour of 8:36 p.m. to address matters pertaining to Section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001, SO 2001, Chapter 25, to consider matters relating to 1. Working conditions of employees related to the Planning Department, Report CS03 2021. Under Section 2B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal local board employees, and Section 2D, labor relations or employee negotiations. And item 2, closed session minutes of the regular council meeting dated March 1st, 2021. Need a mover and a seconder to go into closed session, please. Moved by Councillor Ternosky, seconded by Conseiller Brisson. Everyone in favor?
Mike Ternosky, yes.
André, oui.
Jamie, yes.
Cindy say yes.
Thank you very much. We are now out, going into closed session. For those who are watching, this this part of the meeting is away from the public eye to discuss those permitted discussions. We will report out of closed session after we're done, and then we will pass the confirming bylaw to end the meeting. So if you're not sticking around, thank you very much, everyone who attended. Have a great evening. So Madame Camille-Laflamme is back. All members of council are back. So it is just a report out of closed session.
Good night, everyone. So we're back at 9:22. And for the first part, there was council was briefed and a resolution will be proposed for council's consideration. And for the number 2, the closed session minutes were presented and adopted for March 1st as presented.
Thank you very
much. So the
much.
resolution for the number 1 is that council receives report CS-03-2021 dated April 19, 2021 and approves the retention, attraction, responsibility premium as recommended for existing and new municipal planners position.
Okay, thank you very much. Do I need a mover and a seconder, please? So moved by Conseil Lorrain, seconded by Conseil Brisson. A call for the vote.
Mike Ternowski, yes.
André, oui.
Jamie, yes.
Cindy Sosa, yes.
Perfect. Vote is carried. There was nothing, the minutes were passed. So confirming bylaw 42, Madame Camille-Laflamme?
Oui, Monsieur le Maire.
So that bylaw 2021-42 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Russell at its regular council meeting held on April 19, 2021 be read a first, second, and third time and passed. Need a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Ternowski, seconded by Conseiller Lorrain. All those in favor?
Mike Ternowski, yes.
André, oui.
Jamie, yes.
Cindy Sosa, yes.
Perfect. Confirming bylaw is passed. Our next meeting of council will be on Monday, May 3rd, 2021, and we are adjourned at 9:24 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Have a good evening.